In this video we give you 5 quick tips on the Ficus lyrata, also known as the Fiddle Leaf Fig. So welcome to Swedish Plant Guys. In this video we give you 5 quick tips on the Ficus lyrata, also known as the Fiddle Leaf Fig. Starting with number 1, watering. This is a plant that drinks quite a lot of water, and the reason is quite simple. You have these massive leaves and they require quite a lot of water to function. But that doesn't mean that this is a plant that wants to stand in water. So you should never add more water than it's able to drink. What I mean by that is that we recommend you to use a pot that has drainage holes, so that you can give this plant water with a high frequency. You water it quite a lot, quite often, but you make sure that all of that excess water goes out of the pot. One way of doing that is, of course, to use your finger and feel the soil. When you feel that the soil is starting to dry out, and it has dried out maybe a couple of centimeters or an inch down into the soil, then it's time to water again. Make sure that that excess goes away. Number 2, oedema. This is a very, very common problem with the Ficus lyrata. And what is oedema? Well, this plant is actually showing us oedema. And it's these reddish dots on the newer leaves here. Now, at first glance, you might be thinking, well, this has pests on it. But when you start to feel this, you can't feel anything. There are no pests anywhere around. They're just these reddish dots on the leaves. And also on some of the leaves that are a little bit bigger. So what is oedema? Well, like I said before, the Ficus lyrata drinks a lot of water. It needs a lot of water to be able to push it through the system and out to these massive leaves. Now what happens is that it pushes it with such force that the newest leaves here can't handle it. And what happens is that the new formed cells here actually burst. And that is what we see here. These are the reddish dots are cells that has exploded or ruptured. But oedema is not a huge problem, because what happens is that over a longer period of time, when these small leaves get to be bigger, it actually goes away. Now we can show you that on this plant here as well. We have a lot of oedema on the smaller leaf here. Then we have some oedema left on the larger leaf. If we move down the stem here, we can see that we have oedema, still some of it left on this leaf here. But when we come down to this leaf, you can see that it's almost completely gone. So over time, it's not a problem, it's not an issue, it will disappear. And just so you know, there's nothing you can do about this. This is going to happen whether you like it or not. It probably just means that you are watering your plant in the right frequency and the right amount, because it is pushing up a lot of water, and with that water comes all of the nutrients. So it will disappear, you can't do anything, but now you know why it's there. Now the last 3 tips are actually concerning how to get your Fiddle Leaf Fig to branch out. And that is not easy. You will not have success every time. However, all of these 3 tips need to be done at the same time of year. So we always do it when the plant is active. That means that it's growing, it's showing you that it is growing, and it is usually during spring or autumn. That's when we go in and do one of these 3 things. And also, always do these when the plant is feeling well. If you have a plant that is showing you that it's not feeling well, then don't do any of these. Then wait until it's feeling good. And also know that if you have a plant that is full of energy, it will help you with these 3 steps. So how do we get a plant full of energy? Well, when it's active, we fertilize. And if you know that you have fertilized your fiddle leaf fig, you have an advantage of any of these 3 steps. Number 3, pruning. By pruning your fiddle leaf fig, you actually have the highest success rate. But know that when you are pruning, you're actually deciding on the size of your fiddle leaf fig in the future. Now, pruning means that we're going to go in here and actually cut off one of the stems, the main stems. And by doing that, we want it to start to branch out from that point. That also means that it will dictate on how your fiddle leaf fig will look in the future. Now, when we do this, we use a pruning shearer and make sure that it is cleaned, and you can also disinfect it to make sure that you're not transferring any bacteria, fungus, or anything else to your plant. So make sure it's clean before using it. Then we go in and decide where on the stem do we want to make the cut, because as I said, that determines on how the plant will look in the future. Now, with this plant here, I'm actually only going to remove some of the latest plants because I want the height here. I want it to branch out from this height. So what you do is that you go in and you find an internode. Now, what is an internode? Well, that is the space in between 2 nodes. A node is where you have a leaf coming out from the stem here. That is a node. And this is also a node. So the internode is the space in between here. This is where we're going to make the cut. And as you can see here, I actually have a small bud here that is starting to grow very, very slowly. But by pruning off this big part here, I'm actually going to activate that latent bud here, and that is just going to start to shoot off to the side here. So by making the cut in this internode here, we're actually activating this bud and making sure that it will grow. If we hadn't had a bud here, by pruning, we are activating the latent buds that you can't see on that node. So you will get a new branching from here. Now when you make the cut a couple of centimeters above the node here to make sure that if this internode starts to die back a little, it doesn't go down to the node and hurt the node here. So we just make the cut a few centimeters above that node and without trying to harm this latent bud here or this small branching here. Now this is a ficus, and almost all ficuses bleed, and you need to know that this sap here is actually a little bit dangerous for you if you are allergic. So you could react if you get this on your skin or in the eyes or something, then you need to go and call the emergency room. But it's not that dangerous if you're not allergic. So I'm just going to remove this sap a little bit, like that. Now, by pruning this off here, what happens now is that this bud here is going to shoot and start to grow like crazy. So it will go off to this side. Then I can prune it again to make sure. Now, what I want by pruning this is, in the best case scenario, I actually get more buds around this node that are activated and starting to grow. So I get more than one branch here. That is in the best of all worlds. Now, pruning has a very high success rate. By cutting off a main stem like this, it will branch out. You have a almost 100% success rate. However, it's very often that you only get one branch. So know that when you make that cut, it could be just one branch going out. It's not always that you get more branches, so you get that full crown. Number 4 is called pinching. Now, pruning was cutting off a big part of the main stem. Pinching is a little bit more delicate. Now, what we're doing when we're pinching is that we're going in and looking for that bud at the apex, at the top of a stem, that you know is the one that is just going to continue to grow, to continue to make this a main stem. This bud here is what we're going to take away. And I'll show you on the one I cut here because it's easier. On this part here, we have that bud right here. This is just an extension of the main stem. So what happens when we go in and remove this? And by pinching, we usually just mean that you can go in with your fingers, grab a hold of that bud, and just pull it off like that. Now, it will start to bleed a little bit. It's not a problem. Just dry that off and it's not a problem. Now, what we've done here is that when we go in and remove that active bud, we're actually removing something called auxin. Now, auxin is a growth hormone. That growth hormone is sent up to the apex of the plant, or the tips of these big stems here. Now, that growth hormone has a job. Now, that job is to make sure that the plant keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So it activates that bud on top of that stem. But it also inhibits all of those latent buds that you have on the nodes under this top bud here. But by going in and removing that top bud and removing that auxin, the plant starts to produce more auxin, shoots it up, and activates, this is what we want at least, activates some of those latent buds. So by removing that, we could get branching further down on the stem. And I say we can get that because if pruning was almost 100% certain, then pinching have 30 to 40 to 50% chance of making you get branching from that stem. It works, but it doesn't work as well as when you prune. However, when you prune, you will get branching from where you pruned. When you pinch, you will get branching further down the stem. So you could get more branching from multiple nodes if you're lucky. Number 5, notching. What is notching? Well, notching is also a way that you can make your fiddle leaf fig to branch out. Now, I'm going to show you on this fiddle leaf fig here, but know that this fiddle leaf fig is not very old, so it has green stems all the way down. As a fiddle leaf fig matures, the stem turns brown and hardens off a little bit. Notching has the highest success rate when you're doing it on a brown stem. So I'm doing it on a green stem here to show you, but this will probably not work. If you have an older fiddle leaf fig with brown stems, you can use notching. So what we'll do, and I'll just take this up here. What you want to do is that you want to have a very sharp knife. You could also use a very sharp pruning shearer like this, but it's easier with a sharp knife. Make sure it's clean, like I said before, so that you're not transferring any bacteria or disease to the plant. Now what you do, and you can make these notches on a couple of ways along the stem here. What you do is that you find a node somewhere on the stem that you would like it to branch out. And this is where you can be creative, because if you make the notch above this node and this leaf here, I know that it will start to branch out in the same direction as the leaf here. If I instead choose this node here, and you see the leaf is going this way, you know that the branching will go this way instead. So here you can be creative and find out how you want your fiddle leaf fig to look in the future. So notching is that you use a sharp knife, you go in just a couple of centimeters, 1 or 2 centimeters, that is half an inch up to maximum 1 inch above a node, and you make a cut. And you make that cut at an angle from upwards down like this. And you make that cut. You never want to make that cut deeper than 1/3 of the entire width of the stem here. But often you know that you've gone far enough when it starts to bleed a lot. So if you want to be really sure, you can actually water your fiddle leaf fig a couple of hours before doing this, because then you know that it's in full effect drinking, and you will see that it will bleed a little bit more. Now that's not a problem that it's bleeding, it's actually showing you that you've gone enough into the stem. So you make the cut, at an angle, and like that. Now you can see it starts to bleed a little bit here. Now this notching is a way of trying to push the plant to activate buds around this area here. This also has to do with the oxen, because it will accumulate a little bit of oxen here at where you made that cut, because that oxen cannot get any further up the stem here. So in the best of worlds, you will activate buds here and it will start to grow out from here. And this type of notching, you can actually make 2, 3, or 4 of them along one stem. Now, usually it takes a couple of weeks to see the result here. And the success rate, somewhere between 20 to 30%. So, did I harm the plant if we don't have any success here? No, I didn't, because that wound will heal. You will have a little bit of a scarring there, but you haven't hurt the plant. So by doing this, you can push the plant to branch out, and you can also try and figure out exactly how it will look in the future. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That really helps our channel a lot. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do. Hit the bell as well so you get a notification every time we put up something new. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, where you can get sneak previews on upcoming videos and sometimes a little bit more. Now until next time, hej då!